Hi, everyone. My name is Saleha, and today we are talking about young men's mental health from multicultural backgrounds. I'm going to read some data from the government website on young men's mental health conditions, and data from the ABS tells us that among young people aged between 15 and 24, 26% reported having any long-term mental or behavioral condition. Data from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare shows that in 2019, there were 461 deaths by suicide amongst young people aged between 15 and 24, a rate of 14%. A rate of 14 per 100,000 young people. And joining me to discuss this very important issue is Jagesh Panchal, who I have known for a few years. But before we start, if you find any part of our conversation triggering or distressing, please do call Beyond Blue on 1300 224636 or Men's Line on 1300 78 9978 for 24/7 support. Thank you for joining me, Jagesh. And before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting today. And I pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging, including our community elders who may be listening to our webcast. Hi, Jagesh, and thank you for joining me after the many efforts we had trying to record this webcast.
No worries. Thank you for having me today.
Before we start and talk about an issue which you are very passionate about, can you tell us something about yourself, please?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Jagesh. I'm from South Asian Gujarati background, and I run and founded Shakti Mental Health Melbourne. So Shakti Mental Health is a social enterprise that advocates and discusses mental health in the South Asian Australian community. So we do this by presenting stories, doing discussions, running events that are all about getting South Asian and wider multicultural community more positively inclined to discuss their mental health, find support with their mental health and well-being, and ensure others around them also have supports to discuss and advocate for well-being.
Thank you. When did you found Shakti Mental Health, and what was your reason?
Yeah, so I founded Shakti Mental Health in 2018. So the reason for starting it was I had this experience of growing up with some mental health challenges, namely like anxiety, depression, which is on and off, and not having a lot of family and then people close to me to discuss it with. So as I got older and then got to like high school and university, I saw like there was more South Asians that I was able to connect with, and more South Asians who were young who were discussing mental health. And what about like there's a lot of first, second generation South Asians in Melbourne. We should have a safe space where we discuss mental health. And that was the whole catalyst for starting Shakti. Because at the end of the day, the way I see it is I don't want the next generation of young South Asians going through what I went through growing up. So if they have some discourse, some more positive outlets where they can get some early intervention, then that's what Shakti is there to support people with.
What a great initiative. Talking about young people coming and talking to you, do you feel that the younger generation is easily seeking help? And if they are not, why not?
Yeah, I think what I've seen, which is quite positive, is that a lot more younger generation, younger South Asians and multicultural community are discussing and seeking support for their mental health. I think we've got a good generation of young people now who are quite advocacy driven, they're quite activism driven, and they're seeing things around them that they want they want to make change. So they're doing their own part to find their own support, talk to friends, get the discussion going, talk to their parents, and ensure that their parents know that this discussion is quite important as well. You can already see with many young people are quite driven in terms of like climate change, in terms of protesting. So we've got a lot of young people right now who are quite driven in finding support. But one of the issues with that is that the right support isn't always available. So you're seeing a lot of young people from multicultural backgrounds specifically having to go to like maybe 2 or 3 different psychologists or mental health professionals until they find someone who will fit with them, who understands them culturally. So it's not an overnight, thing to find support. It does take a while. I bet you're seeing that young people are making that effort to find support that will make a difference for them.
So when young people come to see you and start talking to you, Jagesh, what are the words they are using to describe their feelings? Because there are young people
a lot of young
who don't know what words to use.
There's like quite a lot of, I think a lot of people are quite upfront with what they're feeling. So they will say that, I haven't been able to talk about like a lot of mental health challenges at home, or like depression has really been feeling bad lately. Or they'll say like, I haven't been able to sleep, or I'm on like medication now because of like to sleep better, or to stay awake, or not have as much anxiety. But on the other end, there's a lot of young people who have just, or quite vague sometimes, will say, "Oh, I just haven't been feeling good," or don't always have the discourse of explaining why they haven't been feeling as good as they have in the past. So it's quite like, there's a lot of varying, I think, in terms of young people who know like what to say, but then others that it's no fault of their own, who know that something's wrong with them, but they don't always have the words to describe, like, this is specifically what I'm feeling, I just need support, but I don't know where to start specifically.
Do you give them words to express what they're feeling?
Yeah. So it's good to give them what I'll try to do is just have a conversation with people who approach me in terms of like getting support from Shak Mental Health. So asking them, what's been going on lately? What are some of your what languages do you speak? What area do you live in? Who are some people I can connect you with in your area in terms of mental health professionals? So really trying to get across to them, really just what's been going on, and then using that to find some support that will work best for them, and then seeing if they can describe or express what they're feeling a bit better with mental health professionals, if that's a psychologist or a counselor, or just someone who's from a culturally diverse background who will understand them better.
Sure. I know we women and even young girls, we are very vocal about our feelings. At least we have been over the last 10 years, and we understand mental health. Do you see the same with young boys? And what age group are you working with? Are you working with really young boys? Are you working with teenagers, and up to what age group?
Yeah, so in terms of like Shak Mental Health in our events, what we're doing, we primarily work with like a younger South Asian multicultural cohort. So I would say like 16 to 35 years old. But like a lot of our content does reach the older community. But in terms of a lot of our events, we get a lot of people who are from like my generation, who are, mainly like 16 to 30, 35 years old, who come to our events and take part in like Shak Mental Health discourse. Yeah.
And do you think after talking to you, they find it easier to talk to their parents, to their partners, to their friends? Do you find it easier? I mean, and are we, and I'm talking about our generation of people who have, children who are your age, are we more accepting of mental health? Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I think especially when you were talking about like there's a lot of young women who are quite who get the conversation going. On the other hand, like with young men, especially young men from South Asian backgrounds, you don't see that discussion as much. So, there's that like stigma that men from South Asian backgrounds don't really discuss mental health. It's quite a private issue. They deal with it themselves. It's seen as weak to talk about it. So what we've seen after men have come to our South Asian men's wellbeing discussions, there's more of a discussion happening. There's more of like a sense of group, sense of community, where those discussions have been had after men like discussions. So some people have like told me that, I found a psychologist, some men specifically have said, I found a psychologist from the Shakti mental health website after seeing some work that Shakti has done. So that's outcome, because we see that men are taking part in the discussion. They're taking their time to find mental health professionals that will work for them. And with like men as well, not just like South Asian men, but a lot of the discussions we have, they're done like, we don't sit down and like plan a time to have them, that you're done, around like, having drinks with mates or around like a barbecue or like watching sport together. So it's like a natural way.
Yeah.
So I've said that like we need like a catalyst in front of us to get that discussion going. It's very hard to like be in a room with like 6, 7 other people who you might not know and just, talk about like feelings. But if we're doing it in a way that, you're drinking or like drinking coffee together or you're eating food together, you've got something in front of you that can like take away from the discussion and make you feel more comfortable.
Sure. So one of the things, we've all grown up with this image of the man, the macho image of the man. It may not hold true anymore in your generation, but I know my girls don't look at macho men. That's not something they describe. These are not the words that they describe when they talk about men or boys. But we have always, our generation and the generation before us, the man was the provider, the man looked after the family. A man is the person you go to, as head of the family for anything that went wrong. And I know my mother was stronger than my dad. So I learned at a very young age that if I had issues, my mother was the one I would go and talk to, not my father. In our house, it's the same thing. I mean, my girls will talk financial issues with their father, but when it comes to any emotional stuff, if they're going through anything, it's always me. So do you think men find it easier to go and talk to women now, to their mothers, to their sisters, to their friends who are women, not necessarily girlfriends, but, mates who are women? Do you think that is happening? That's a change that is happening?
I definitely see that. I don't think it's necessarily a change. I think it's just been something that a lot of young men are comfortable with doing. Like, I remember in one of our men's discussions, a few of the guys, like, I'll talk to my close girlfriends first about something like challenges that I'm having with mental health, rather than talking to like my close like mates. So I'll talk to them like, because like they've built that relationship with them that women or their like girlfriends around them are like more understanding, or they can talk to them more comfortably, they can open up and they won't feel as judged, and they'll get good like feedback or advice. At the same time, we'd like to see that more mates or more guys are approaching their male friends first as well to open up that discussion. So we want to see that your mates around you understand what you're going through, won't stigmatize you or like bully you for bringing up those discussions with you. So we want that other South Asian and multicultural men are approaching their male friends as much as their female friends as well, so that that discourse is shared equally and that you're not just hiding stuff from the mates around you and you're sharing it with just close females that are close to you as well.
Why do you feel that there is a lack of group conversation among men and mental health? I mean, you did answer quite a bit of that, but is it still a taboo subject?
I think it is. That like taboo is really slowly breaking down, which is really great to see. But I think a lot of that, the like the myth that it's a taboo subject, or that it still is a lot from like the way men or young boys are being brought up. So who they found them in their environment. Are they seeing those discussions happening? Are they seeing like their like older brothers, or they're seeing their fathers have that discussion? Are they seeing their friends around them having those discussions as well? So if we can see your counterparts, other male friends around you, having that discussion, you'll be taking part in breaking down that taboo subject that men don't bring up those discussions. But I know like very well that a lot of men still have issues with having those discussions in public. A lot of us still have those discussions in private life. They won't necessarily talk to their partners about it. They'll think to themselves, I need and just deal with it, and like I'll let my partner know as little as I can, and this is something I'll do on my own, which is really like counterproductive. So we really need to start to just let other people around us know, especially if we're men, like what's going on, what support we need. And at the end of the day, the people around you might not always know how to support you, but at least you're telling them, this is going on in my life. These are the stresses I'm having. This would support me, or like, this is what we could do together. So I could feel better about it. So at least open up, have that communication with those people around you so that you don't feel so isolated.
Jay, do you think our generation of parents with children your age are more open to these discussions, and we are more accepting of mental health than our generation was? Because I cannot imagine most of us would have had a discussion about mental health issues with our parents, or our parents having discussion with. It was something that was not talked about, that was not acknowledged. But now we know, that mental health is as important as physical health. So do you think our generation of parents have made it easier for you guys to have an open discussion? And another one, I'll club it together, is that do you think young men who are 16, 17 are still fighting that, one life at home and one life outside, when they have to conform because of peers and, I don't know if the word is not sure, but they live dual lives? Do you see that a lot amongst your generation? Or even, you said you have young people coming to you, 16 years, 18 years, they come to you. So do you see that conflict?
Yeah, I think I think that this generation is having an easier time having those mental health discussions because there's been more of like a normality with discussing mental health and well-being. Like I can confidently say to my friends, oh, this is what I spoke about with my therapist in my last session. And just overhearing other friends in universities, they're quite open, a lot of them, about what they're discussing. Maybe not as much what they're discussing with their therapist, but they're very open to saying, I went to see my therapist last week, it was a great session. Or I went to see my mental health professional, the session was okay. But they're saying it in the public that they're going to see someone, or they've seen someone, or, I had to reschedule, or I've started to see my therapist, and this is what we discussed. So it's really out there, it's really open, which is really good to see. I don't necessarily think that a lot of my parents' generation have made that discussion easier, because still growing up, I didn't have, or my parents didn't really have that mental health discussion with me. It was more the other way around. Our generation ensuring that our parents knew that it was important to discuss mental health. Because at the same time, like you said before, your parents, they didn't discuss it with you. So, I can't blame my parents for not having a discussion with me, because they didn't have discourse around mental health or well-being. They didn't have their parents or grandparents talk about it with them. So how can I necessarily expect them to have that discussion with me? It's got to be a reverse of me saying to them, and other young South Asians saying to their parents that, hey, mental health is important, I've had issues with it, or people around me have had issues with it. This is what you should know about it, and this is the support I need. Last year, we did a workshop on how parents can support the mental health of their children with a high school in the southeast here. And that was all about how parents can better support their children's mental health. So we had some facts and figures and tips on how you can get the discussion going, why parents need to see it's important. And that was all about just letting parents understand that, your kids might be going through some stuff. And you need to know what that is, and you need to know how to have the conversation with them. And what I tell parents, and like a lot of the times, is that your kids might not be the ones you go to. They go to have that discussion with you. They might go to their friends first, or they might go to a mental health professional first. But it's important that you at least know what's going on so you can understand their issues. You might not always be able to support what's going on with them, but if you've got an understanding, at least you're not just completely blank to it. So it's good that there's a discourse where there's more young people having that discussion with their parents around them. And on that second part, I think there's a lot of times where a lot of young men and like young women from South Asian backgrounds are living that like dual life. Like I can see, or like I know like a lot of friends who kind of have like, they're more like resided at home, or maybe not as talkative, but then when they go out, they can be themselves. They can be themselves around their friends. They can be themselves like out and about. And that's not something that maybe the environment as home like gives them the opportunity to do. So like there could be like for like a lot of reasons. It could be like the way you're brought up. It could be like cultural or religious reasons, or a lot of parents or may not like feel comfortable with you like drinking at home, or that's not something that you've done growing up. But like once you're outside, and we've seen a lot with a lot of young people who like once they leave home or go to university, they can be themselves, or once they live like in like the dorm, they're not living at home, they can be themselves a bit more. And that's where they find out like, oh, this is who the person I am. I can be more comfortable with myself. So a lot of young people, I think, need that time to really find themselves, find out who they are. But at the same time, we don't want to necessarily like hide that from our parents as well.
Absolutely.
So there's got to be, like some sort of discourse or conversation happening where you can be yourself around your parents. And it might not be like your 100% self, but at least you don't have to go home and feel like, now I got to conform. I got to be a bit more quiet. I can't dress as I do as if I'm going out. We don't want to feel like we need to hide ourselves when we're leaving home or leaving our parents' place. That's something that is like a bit ongoing, but we need to make sure that who we are, and our parents need to give us the freedom to also express if we're going home, if we're visiting, if we're staying with them again, because we don't want to keep living this like dual life of like being someone and then hiding a part of who we are.
Yeah, and that shouldn't be, at least with our parents, we can be ourselves. With everybody, we should be ourselves. And I know many organizations, including mine, they offer EAP for everybody. And I hope, young people who cannot talk are using those tools. So before we end, this was really interesting, always is, every time I talk to you. How do you look at men being advocates?
Yeah, I think men being advocates for mental health it's a big thing. And we want more men to get the conversation of why mental health is important. Young men especially, so 1 in 4 young men have experienced a mental health challenge or are diagnosed with a mental health disorder. So we can see that a lot of young men are going or have experienced something to do with mental health, whether it's anxiety, depression. Anxiety is one of the leading causes of mental health.
What is it that makes young men? Sorry, Jagesh. What is it that's making these young people anxious? What is it? Is there
I think it's a lot of things. I don't think it's any one thing. A lot of it, I think, has to do with school. It has to do with home life as well. I think for like young boys in particular who are like 14 to 18 years old, there's like a lot of changes happening in their life. Yeah. And there's a lot of things they might not understand, that you can see that anxiety is growing from it. A lot of young men, I think from multicultural backgrounds, Like I've seen working as like a youth working in the Southeast a bit, there are a lot of issues with like either domestic violence, or there's a lot of issues with culture, and there's a lot of issues with lack of discussion in multicultural communities in the Southeast. So if you're like a young boy at home and you're seeing a lot of these like arguments between parents, or you're seeing a lot of like arguments culture, you might have a lot of anxiety from it, and you don't know what to do. So that's some of the issues, and then you have to go to school as well and kind of like hide that, or not talk about it. So that can give a lot of young boys anxiety. So I think that could be like one of the leading causes. But going back to like, this is why we need more young boys and young men, especially to be advocates for mental health, and not only for mental health. Young men, I think, specifically need to be advocates in other parts of life too. So be better allies to the women around you as well. We can see, like, really saddeningly, in Melbourne, there's a lot of cases of domestic violence. Melbourne, Australia, has one of the leading causes of women dying from domestic violence. And we need more young men, or men in particular, to be advocates for that. So be better allies to the women around you. Have leadership in that domestic violence front. So if you're an advocate as in for mental health, you should just be an advocate like in other parts of like challenges that are quite specific, or other challenges that are around you as well. So yeah, I think we really need to lead the way in terms of young men to be advocates in their life.
I was going to ask you, what is the message that you would give to young people, but you answered all of it. So I'm going to end with, if you were to give one suggestion to parents, my generation, with kids your age and people younger to me, what would you say to them? What would you say about mental health? What message would you give to parents?
Yeah, I think the message I'd give to parents is have patience with your children. Give them time to discuss issues of mental health that are going on with their lives. You will definitely see that they will have times where they're like bright, they're open, they're themselves. And there's other times where they'll be like, closed in, they'll stay in their room. They might not be as talkative. And this might be like quite up and down, but give them time to be themselves. Be patient with them, and give them time to come to you and discuss what's going on. And this will be like an ongoing thing as well. So it won't just be one issue that goes away. It could be something that's an ongoing, and you need to give yourself space and give your children the space as well to open up to you and let them know like what's happening in their lives, so you can support them as best as you can.
Thanks so much, Jagesh. So awesome. Always to talk to you. Thank you for your time.